welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. We are less than a week from Iowa, but other than that, there's just so much news to get to that I'm not even sure what we're going to be able to handle here, Vic, but we're up for the task. For the task. I'm Mary Katharine Ham. He's my co-host, Vic Matus from the Washington Free Beacon. Before we get to all the news, what's going on with you?
Well, hello, Mary Katharine. I only need about 15 minutes to get through my intro. Kate got me for my Christmas present something that when it arrived, it was damaged.
Okay.
When Amazon delivered it. So she had to send it back, annoyingly. And then it just arrived a couple days ago. A turntable.
A turntable?
And so we have speakers. And not Bluetooth speakers, mind you. So not the kind that...
Like the legit.
Legit. So and I remember having done this a long time ago, and that memory kicked in. Like, I don't know a lot of things, but I do know this, technically speaking. It's an Audio-Technica turntable, and it's got the copper wire things, and you got to wrap it around. Wow. And we have the two big, nice-sized speakers. They're not 4 feet high or anything,
right.
but they're decent-sized, I think, speakers in our TV room.
Nice.
And we actually had vinyl records that she had bought for me and for the kids for Christmas, and we played it, and it was amazing. And we'd been told a fellow who used to tune our piano, he used to say, and it was a revelation to me because I keep on thinking that technology makes things better.
Right.
And this is years ago. And so I thought, obviously, once we got to CDs and you got special kinds of CDs, the sound is so good. But in fact, every time it advances, the sound gets more and more compressed. And by the time you get to an MP3, it's really, you lose a lot in the sound quality, and you're playing it from maybe a Bluetooth speaker. So some people actually have a turntable connected to a Bluetooth. You might as well be playing it from your phone. It's this.
Okay, because it doesn't translate all the information.
No, it does not transfer. So
look at this audio file over here. All of a sudden,
it's amazing. So the great thing was then we decided to give our son first dibs on what he want to play, and the album that he had as a Christmas gift was John Cougar Mellencamp's Scarecrow.
Oh, nice.
It's fantastic. You feel like you're in the studio. So when Mellencamp is singing, there's this echo almost effect because you could feel like it's how it sounds in the studio, let alone an amazing, the bass. Everything is great. And I got the idea for wanting a turntable after visiting with Mike Warren, our friend, because he had a similar setup, and we were listening to side B of Abbey Road. And, it goes through a series of songs at the end, and the two of us are getting quadrophonically into it, about which side it's playing on. It's great. So I just want to say it was, that's what I've been doing lately, and I find it very calming because this is something that, I don't know how often people do this anymore, but just sitting and listening.
It's nice.
To a record.
It's been a while.
And not having to talk, just like,
I rarely listen to an album.
Yeah.
In this case, it would be Spotify or something. All the way through anymore. That just doesn't happen very
you
often.
Jump around. It's true.
The one I revisit when I want to do that is Rubber Soul.
Oh, it's a great album.
That's just a fun album to listen to all the way through. By the way, just to date us further, it does have that warm sound when you play a turntable and a vinyl record. It reminds me of my childhood. And I think what you're saying is that if you're doing the Bluetooth speakers, you would get like a Phil Spector, not a wall of sound, but a baseboard of sound.
Yes, that's
you're
right.
getting
that's a good reference there,
a shiplap of sound.
Yeah.
We're
like
a quarter round of sound.
We're like Spin Magazine here, talking high tech. No, and it reminds me of
things,
when I grew up, we had an old show and tell record player, and whatever records my parents had, and 45s, and so my sister and I would listen to like Edgar Winter's Frankenstein, and some really terrible songs like Tell Laura I Love Her, Watch That Flower Grow. That was trippy. But my sister got, you can't find this anywhere, by the way. You cannot find this anywhere. And it's A Night at Studio 54. Supposedly recorded over 2 nights, but really what they did was they take all the popular hits, disco hits from that time, and this is probably a Steve Rubell idea. Right. And they just merged one hit into another. So it's like you're on the dance floor. So if you had a party, you would not need a DJ for this. And you just play a couple. It's a double album.
Sounds like a good way to save money on a wedding.
Yes, you could have done that. And you could use that money on buying all the Coke.
I like it. Yes, good call.
It's Studio 54
good
after
call.
all.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. We listened to like all the Beatles, the Stones.
Yeah.
The Band was a big one.
You guys are
and,
cool.
well, when we were
Band.
kids,
Yeah.
there was one Joan Baez album that my dad was not a huge Baez fan, but Diamonds and Rust is a fantastic song.
Okay.
Ann Peebles, I Can't Stop the Rain.
Ann Peebles, yeah.
Ooh, it's a beautiful song. If you can listen to those on vinyl, do that.
Wow. Okay.
And then that's how I got introduced to Hair and Jesus Christ Superstar. My dad had those albums, and I would listen to those on repeat.
Yes, the musicals.
Yes.
Musicals on
And I
vinyl.
always thought someday I'll watch Hair, and it will make sense what's happening. No.
No,
That's
you know
not
what?
how Hair works.
It did well on some of the quadrants.
It does indeed. All righty.
Gross, but anyway.
Well, enjoy that turntable.
Thank you. How are you, Mary Katharine? And for those of us who haven't turned to, this is a great reason to get onto YouTube.
Let me put my baseboard of sound on.
This is a great prop, and if you haven't tuned into the YouTube of Getting Hammered, this is a reason, because you look like a cheerleader. Okay, a bunch of guys just went onto YouTube just now.
They're going to be sorely disappointed when they tune in.
Explain, okay. What is going on here?
So I have a whole thing happening here.
Okay.
And I'm going to briefly explain to you what's going on, which is that I saw a reel on Instagram, which is like TikTok for old people. And I saw Stefon Diggs of the Buffalo Bills entering the stadium in his game day fit. Okay?
Okay.
And I thought, I think I own all of those things. And so I've decided that in order to sort of have some fun and also mess with my children, that I will take them to school in some game day fits during the playoffs and into the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And so this is my Stefon Diggs game day fit. He had a
what on earth?
We'll show it on the Instagram at Getting Hammered
like
Podcast.
Stuff from Kiss.
So this is a Letterman jacket with some sparkles that I added, a little bit of sequin, rhinestone action.
This is a high school Letterman jacket.
Yes. Now his was a Louis Vuitton Letterman jacket. Okay, mine is different. He had like a black kilt, so I've used a costume skirt from our home that I have sort of turned into a kilt-like situation.
Yes.
And he had white crew socks and
black loafers. Yes, like almost like penny loafers. But.
And so that is the fit that I wore to take my children to school with a white button-up shirt.
So do you have this is like a varsity letter jacket is what you're wearing?
Yes.
Did you have one growing up? Did you have one in high school?
You know what? I did not buy one, and I'm glad looking back, because that would have been a lot of money to me at the time.
Yeah.
And honestly, this one works. This one's my husband's.
Well, it's really cool looking.
Thank you. And this one's red, white, and blue. Mine would have been purple and yellow. So like the chances for wearing that one, not so great.
I have a varsity letter jacket. This will shock listeners.
By the way, I had that's not true. I did play soccer, and I had a letter for that, but I probably would have put my band letter on it.
Okay, well, all right. You know
I
what?
lettered in band
because they let you do that. By the way, in our school, so like if you were like National Honor Society or something,
get a letter
I think
for
it was
that.
National Honor Society or one of these special awards. Then you could wear the letter jacket, and I did have one of those medals, but it wasn't for that. It was for tennis.
Okay.
So you get the little thing, and it was 4 years. I did 4 years.
Look at you.
And so it's a blue and white.
That's a good one.
It doesn't fit me anymore.
It's no purple and gold. Anyway, okay, so we got to get on.
Let's go.
Let me just run through so that we hit on a lot of topics without even necessarily having to discuss them. But like Nick Saban, legendary University of Alabama football coach, announced he's retiring yesterday. The portal remains open for those players, by the way, for about 30 days, I think. So a lot of people are going to be skedaddling out of there.
That happens.
So Nick Saban retiring. Perhaps he could give some notes to two 70-plus old men running for office about how to step away. How to step away at 72.
When the going is good.
The spring chicken age of 72. Bill Belichick.
Yes,
also
huge.
Retiring.
26 years.
Legendary NFL coach. Little update on the Secretary of Defense. Turns out that he has prostate cancer.
Yes.
And he was having his prostate out on that
is correct.
December 22nd.
It is strange that you would call it elective. I understand that prostate cancer is slower than other cancers, but a prostatectomy is a very serious thing.
It's a pretty decent-sized surgery. It is not
minimally
invasive in the way that they were
suggesting. Laparoscopic, I assume. But the other thing to keep in mind is prostate cancer. There's a higher occurrence rate among African-American men than among other demographics, and also mortality rate is much more serious. So this would have been good for, as a general awareness, I would say, for people to say, hey, the Secretary of Defense, I have this. You should get yours checked out.
Well, yeah. And thankfully, it is a very treatable form of cancer,
It is.
and we hope that it was caught early and that
Right,
this is
right,
taking care of what it
right.
needs to take care of. There
But-
remain no consequences for the fact that none of us knew anything.
Well, I figured if there were no consequences for Afghanistan,
Yep.
there's not going to be one for the prostatectomy. And again, as a public service announcement, get yours checked out. I had mine. It was like an episode from Oz. Continue.
Speaking of which, Hunter was on the Hill.
Great transition. How about that? A surprise.
Yeah. So he shows up. He's been asked to testify, but he refused to the last time. Remember, he did his own little press conference outside the Hill because he wants to testify allegedly publicly, but they want him to testify privately. So he shows up again, flies across the country,
with the lawyers,
goes to the hearing to sit in the front row, at which point he and Nancy Mace start insulting each other like children. And look, I think that
now he
Hunter,
being actually Abby Lowell, right? I don't think, did he say a word? Did Hunter say a word?
I don't think Hunter actually said anything. Yeah, he's just sitting there. But
Abby Lowell.
The other thing that's interesting about this, by the way, and I think is probably the reason for both appearances by Hunter on the Hill, I think they're filming a documentary about him. So this is content. We're making content, guys.
I was just going to say,
just like my outfit is content. Hunter.
Well, I was going to say this was all just a publicity stunt, but if you, that's interesting.
Yes, that's the scuttlebutt. Okay, so Hunter's on the Hill.
Yeah.
Nothing happened except for everybody looked silly.
And Nancy Mace said things that I don't know if we could say it on this family podcast where she called him out and said he is the epitome of white privilege and he had no. Yeah. Which is interesting because Margie Taylor Greene had pictures that clearly contradict that claim. And I was going to say, the only thing is, it was such a big to do, and then getting up and leaving, and they're all laughing, and it's not House Republicans great. It's not a great moment.
Everything is embarrassing.
It is. It's a real show.
And Hunter is embarrassing, but just the way that things are conducted these days, in basically all places.
Yes. No,
it's embarrassing.
This is what we're dealing with. And I was kind of hoping Abby Lowell was going to yell, this committee owes us an apology, like in The Godfather Part 2.
Meanwhile, they're working on budget deals on the Hill.
Yeah.
Speaker Johnson has put a package together that is, I believe, the same package that got McCarthy ousted last time around. Yeah. Some hardliners among those 8 that ousted McCarthy are saying, no, you got to do this and you got to do that. Spending has to be cut, more border in order to get something. Of course, he has to contend with the fact that the government will shut down if they don't pass something.
It is a narrow majority.
And he can lose
idea that you can
2.
Right.
He can lose 2. So
that's right.
That's happening. We'll get into that more in the future when things are, kind of looking more settled or closer to the deadline.
There are I think there are people who, I understand there are those who mean well.
Yeah.
Because they really do care about getting something more serious regarding the border. But Democrats are not going to budge on a lot of these things. And it's not like they have a large majority, as you just pointed out.
I guess the question is, what's the appetite for ousting someone again in an election year?
Having a shutdown.
Or having a shutdown.
Yeah.
So there's that going on. The Epstein list, we haven't even touched on.
No.
Or that's the wrong phrase to use. We will get into that at some point. Meanwhile, there was a Nikki Haley town hall hosted by Fox. There was a Ron DeSantis town hall hosted by Fox. There was a Trump town hall hosted by Fox.
Just the other
running
day.
Opposite on CNN, a debate between Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. We're finally down to 2 on that stage.
It's counter-programming, but it is arsenic and lace. I mean, it's just,
And right before that debate, what did we have but Governor Chris Christie dropping out of
that's right.
the primary. So is the show done? Are we done? Because that's like...
That's...
I've told you all you need to...
that's all you need to know.
Did I mention that Israel is at The Hague because South Africa has decided to prosecute the nation of Israel for a charge of genocide?
And I'd like to give a shout out to, I can't believe I'm doing this again, John Fetterman.
Again, we will play a clip of
South
him.
Africa.
Fantastic.
Who are they really fighting? It's a group of cowards. They hide in tunnels. They hide behind civilians. They attack, kill, and mutilate children, women, and they do that. Stop talking about proportion on that. They shot their best shot on October 7th, and they would have taken more lives if they couldn't do that, but they couldn't do it. And now let's also talk about that. Now we're talking about genocide. And now South Africa is bringing that kind of a trial. Maybe South Africa being able to sit this one out when they're talking about criticizing the Sit it out.
What happened to that guy? I think
I'm telling you, it's like regarding
just,
Henry.
Just enjoy
or
it
Dave.
while...
Maybe it's a different guy.
That's what some people think. Okay. Let's hear a little bit of Chris Christie's speech about
The hot mic?
his great... No.
Oh,
we're not getting to that. First, we're going to do the gracious speech that
gracious.
says, I'm getting out of this situation.
Because I want to promise you this. I am going to make sure that in no way do I enable Donald Trump to ever be president of the United States again. And that's more important than my own personal ambition.
Mary Katharine, do you think that he ever runs again? Or is this
I think
this is his big swan song?
I think likely what he's wrestling with is that this is probably the end of the line for the political career of Chris Christie, which at one point was very promising.
Oh, on the cusp.
Yes.
Like there's a window, and I can't remember if it was that he had decided he was running for a second term.
It was 2012,
Yeah,
right?
he decided to run for a second term, I guess. And so he didn't jump in until later. And then when he did that last time, of course, that was a mess. When he went after successfully, you were there when he went after Marco Rubio. That's what we remember. But you're right. There was a moment in the past, and everybody was with him because he quote told it like it is. He fed off the booing from the various unions, particularly the teachers' unions. He wasn't, and he wasn't scared. He didn't care if you hated him. And his town halls, his press conferences, they were amazing. Yeah, they were amazing.
No, he was, and he told tough truths, like about pensions and public spending to the people who needed to hear it in the state of New Jersey, which is a tough place to do it. He did a nice job of that. I think the theory is like he should have run in 2012, but he ran into a similar issue as like a Governor Youngkin ran into this year, which is that in 2011 he had just been elected.
Right.
His star was rising. In order to run in 2012, you're in a tricky position there. So he waited till 2016, and a lot of people say he shouldn't have because that was where his star was rising, and he should have done it then. Okay. So I think he's wrestling with that. Let me say that this is a campaign promise fulfilled.
Yes. He did what he said he was going to do.
He said he was going to prosecute a case against Trump. I wish he had done it in 2016 and not waited till this year. And that he would not let his own ambition keep him from doing whatever was necessary to stop Trump. So that this seems like a move in that direction. Right. However, Chris Christie giveth and Chris Christie taketh away. So here's Chris Christie on a hot mic, which this also broke on the heels of his announcement that he's not running anymore. Then we hear this.
And let's not forget she spent $68 million.
Yeah.
I mean, we spent like
when you give land to China and places like that.
Yeah, that's what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, she spent $68 million so far, just on TV. Spent $68 million so far, $59 million by DeSantis, and we spent 12. I mean, who's punching above their weight and who's getting a return on their investment, And she's going to get smoked. And you and I both know it. She's not up to this.
she hasn't even been
And she's still 20 points behind Trump in New Hampshire, right?
Yeah.
And he's still going to carry Iowa, right?
Yes. Oh, I talked to DeSantis called me, petrified that I would.
He's probably getting out after Iowa.
Well,
do you really think it was a hot mic?
No.
Okay.
He's a professional.
On the one hand, you think to yourself, how many times does this have to happen to so many people, and they get completely embarrassed, they can lose their job, this
He's
or that.
not embarrassed, so there's that.
Well, there's one, he's never embarrassed. But two, I find myself, even though I might be in front of a microphone, sometimes you can't resist just talking anyway, even though you're like, are we on or not? How many times do I ask this now, right, to Jennifer? Are we on?
Yes, because
you have no idea.
We say scandalous stuff, guys.
Yes, those are for the premium listeners. I'd like to point that out again. But on the other hand, he is a pro, and it's not like he said anything that he's going to be like, oh, I didn't mean that, because
No. And this is kind of the beauty of Chris Christie, is that in a situation like that, even if it were a hot mic, he's like, well, I stand by what I said.
right.
Like,
So she's going to get.
Did I take a mean shot at one of my former opponents as I
Shocking.
was leaving the ring?
Yeah.
No one's surprised.
Yeah. So much for our, though, theories that, maybe in New Hampshire that he'll throw his weight to Nikki. Doesn't sound like it now, particularly saying that she's going to, quote, get smoked, or as Trump says, get creamed. I think that's what he said in his town hall. But,
so here, well, this is a good segue to the debate and to the state of the race at the moment. Nikki Haley, if you believe the polls, rising a bit in Iowa and New Hampshire, certainly within spitting distance of Trump in some of these polls, with a trend forming. Is she going to get smoked? Or if I use the DeSantis trashing, is he petrified?
Right. And that one, I'd like to get more into those details, because that seems much more vague. Petrified in which ways?
Right.
You
of
know?
What?
Petrified of running out of money. Petrified of losing to Trump. Petrified of just Trump being the next president, or losing to Biden. So I'd love to know more about that, but we're not going to get it. Regarding the debate, let me just say this, Mary Katharine. Say what you will about Nikki Haley's performance. She did seem to point out some very interesting contradictions, inconsistencies, perhaps falsehoods by Governor Ron DeSantis. My only complaint is I just wish there was like a website
that you could go to.
Go to look at all the different lies.
Right. Is there
I'm
one?
done. That's all. I'm done. I'm just here for that.
Our friend Vic is referencing that Nikki Haley referenced her campaign website, DeSantisLies.com, I believe 16 times, if I read the transcript totals correctly. A lot of people felt like that was a lot. Yeah. Look, if you're hawking a book or something, you want to mention the name of the book over and over again. By the way, I wrote End of Discussion. It's available on Amazon.com. You want to use the name of the book over and over again so people remember it.
I get it.
Perhaps this was too heavy-handed.
I would say it was a terrible idea, because I don't think it, now that I'm a record person, I don't think it moves the needle. But the idea that has ever worked in order to get, like, she's going to win Iowa, or this is going to help her in New Hampshire, thanks to that DeSantisLies.com website, because we're going after who? Oh, the guy who's at 5%?
Yeah.
And the whole idea that there was a debate between two people and, who are concerned that Donald Trump would become the nominee and then lose to Biden, or he gets convicted and it becomes a felon, and that becomes some problem legally or politically, or both. And what we're going to do is going to have two candidates just destroy each other so that there's nothing left, and then it just paves the way. It's maddening.
Well, and again, I don't know what the correct strategy is, right? I think if I were on the stage, I would be talking about, like, this crazy dude's going to be in court and possibly a felon by the time we get to November. And if you'd like to actually win, I'm a person who has won before. Hey, why don't we try that? And if I were DeSantis, I'd probably be knocking the fact that Nikki Haley hasn't been in office in a long time, and that I've done a lot of things where I actually moved the needle. If I were Nikki Haley, I think I would go after Ron DeSantis, partly on the running of his campaign. I think that's a fair shot, and she took some of those shots.
Sure.
By the way, another important factor is that Americans for Prosperity, which, full disclosure, I am associated with as I'm on the Council of Advisors, they are out with $27 million behind a new digital ad and TV spot campaign in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina. So here's a bit of that ad campaign.
Poll after poll shows Trump is the weakest candidate against Joe Biden. But Nikki Haley crushes Biden by double digits. She even beats him in the swing states that Trump lost in 2020. It's clear Nikki Haley would be the strongest candidate to stop Biden and help elect Republicans across the country. She's a proven conservative fighter. With the criminal trials for President Trump and the liberal media out to get him, our country can't risk 4 more years of Biden and Harris. AFP Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
What's interesting to me is that for all three candidates who I saw last night, Trump in the town hall by himself, I found it interesting. He sat the entire town hall, didn't stalk the stage, didn't roam around.
That used to be his MO.
Didn't engage with voters. Both Nikki Haley and DeSantis in their own town halls were walking around, engaging with people. And Nikki and Ron. They all took shots that don't
It
really...
was the kinder, gentler Trump.
Yeah, well, they don't
approach.
They don't really land to me. For instance, I believe we have a clip of Trump going after DeSantis in the weirdest way.
He's going to be out of the race very soon. He's going to be out very soon. You know, I watched him last night. He's standing up with his shoes, his fancy shoes. And he's going to be out of the race within, a lot of people say before New Hampshire.
Okay, so we've got the fancy
shoes.
shoes
Is he referring to the
line.
cowboy boots?
Yes. Yes. I've never understood the boots attack.
Yeah.
The other one...
a lot of cattle in Florida. Right in the middle. We just never go there.
The other one was about DeSantis being a Fauci fan.
Yeah.
And of course, Ron DeSantis would definitely argue with your characterization of how he handled it.
But if you go back and look at the records, you will see that the biggest fan of Dr. Fauci was Ron DeSanctimonious. He was a big fan. He said, I go by, exactly, quote, I go by what Dr. Fauci said. He said that 2 months in, all the way through, and then eventually changed when it wasn't, that wasn't the dessert of the day. But Ron DeSantis was a big Dr. Fauci fan, and nobody wants to cover that. I say it every time.
Somebody gave him a commendation medal, and it wasn't DeSantis.
Well, it just doesn't pass the smell test, right? You want your attacks to sort of meld with the public perception of this person. I also don't think Haley's attacks on DeSantis as a liar, like that's her headline.
It's bad. I
don't think those meld with people's general sense of him. His weaknesses, such that they are not that weakness.
Yeah. He's, he can be stubborn and strong-willed, and he likes to pick a fight, and maybe he shouldn't pick a fight. You want to argue about his fighting with Disney, for example. Fine, make that the argument. And did you go too far? But the idea that you're a liar or that you were, at some point I think they were forced to say something nice about the other person. And the truth is, there's lots of great things that they can say about the other person, what they've done. Nikki Haley is ambassador to the UN or whatever, her strong foreign policy, and as a very good governor of South Carolina. And obviously Ron DeSantis, being way ahead of that curve in terms of wanting to, lift the shutdown. But, again, they get so focused on they squandered an opportunity is what they did.
Well, so there's one more attack. Actually, I'll mention two, but one more attack from DeSantis where he says, I believe of the clip that references Newsom.
I think the difference between Nikki Haley and me, I listened to all that litany of stuff. I debated the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. I thought he lied a lot. Nikki Haley gives him a run for his money.
Okay. Nobody believes that she's more liberal than Gavin Newsom. There was another line that
wasting
actually...
our time here.
There's another line that you would have thought wouldn't land where he says you can take the candidate out of the UN, but you can't take the UN out of the candidate.
Right.
I disagree with that as a critique because I think she was very strong at the UN.
She represented the Trump administration.
Trump administration's representative. I think she took no guff. She did a great job. However, the line kind of landed.
It's because it's a catchy phrase.
Yes, exactly.
And the first time I heard that phrase was when I was studying abroad in Vienna, and met this Austrian girl who was a friend of a friend, and she was so pro-American.
Right.
And which is surprising among Europeans, back at the time, and be like really pro because she had gone out to the far west.
Right.
And they said something to her about you can, go to America, but you can't, the phrase. I'm not even drunk and I can't repeat the phrase right now. So it's like
you're so excited about Iowa.
I am. All right, but you can't take the America out of the girl. Anyway, it was really interesting.
So in the end, I think look, Haley has momentum. I think that her performance here was not as good as other debates because in other debates she benefited greatly from such an awesome target in Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah.
Right? Every riposte.
Yeah, everybody else kept their powder dry.
Every hit on Vivek feels satisfying.
Right.
It feels like you want him to get punched in that moment.
Yeah.
It's less satisfying when she goes after DeSantis.
Right.
Partly because they don't have that many differences. Let me read a paragraph from Noah Rothman at National Review, who I think sums up this debate pretty well. The candidates discussed their respective tax policy preferences and how reforms to marginal income tax rates relate to economic growth. They submitted competing proposals to address the border crisis through augmented security and reforms to statute. They argued over U.S. grand strategy abroad, the relative importance of America's support for its embattled partners overseas, and the ongoing attacks on American service personnel by Iranian proxies. He goes on to list a bunch of other things about entitlements, which, by the way, I sided with Haley on those. But average viewers were unlikely to see it that way. This was a hyper-competitive contest, and both candidates came away from it diminished. Both DeSantis and Haley seem to have been coached into never letting an opportunity to speak pass without introducing some superfluous attack on their rival. So I think that's probably how most people felt leaving the debate, even though real things were discussed. And this is the handicap of the whole race, right?
Yeah.
For these guys is that they must fight in order to gain any ground.
Right.
But fighting makes you look bad. Meanwhile, Trump, who should look bad because he's not fighting and has not given the voters any the respect to get in the ring, is just sitting there hanging out on a stool.
Yeah. Well, it turns out
talking about somebody's fancy shoes.
The strategy of skipping every single Republican primary debate was the right thing for him to do.
Well, and there will be.
Right.
What's interesting to me, there's at least one more in New Hampshire in January. If someone is nipping at his heels in either Iowa or New Hampshire, does he have to show up? Probably not.
As long as he's like 50%. No, and again,
that's what I mean. If somebody's able to close the gap.
I don't think they will. He's going to win Iowa. And
by the way,
New Hampshire will be
weather's
interesting.
supposed to be terrible in Iowa.
Oh, that get out the vote, man. That's it.
That ground game will matter. Your
because
commitments will matter. The strength of your commitments will matter.
Yeah, because every candidate will be saying, to be safe. We want everyone to stay, the roads, if it's dangerous.
But definitely get your ass out there.
But they're telling those operatives, you better walk them there.
Yeah.
You better walk. Get the dog sleds out. Put the chains on the tires, like in Rocky IV.
It's going to be nasty out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where we are. I think DeSantis did maybe slightly worse than his other debates, but largely fine. He brings receipts. He brings
There's no movement.
knowledge.
He does, and he's great. It's like on paper, you look at this and say, this guy's going to be amazing. How can he go wrong? And he was right. He was right about everything during COVID. Oh, my goodness. And schools. And that's why everybody's going to Florida. So he must be doing a great job. And if he could do a great job for Florida, he'll do a great job for America. And yet, there he is at 5%.
He brings.
Go ahead.
By the way, he did promise on stage to bring a reckoning for all of the COVID policies. We'll play that clip.
Word vomit from time to time on social media, but obviously I will uphold the Constitution. And I think it's fine to criticize Donald Trump, and I know the media brings this up a lot. But you know who else deserves to be criticized? The people that violated the Constitution during COVID to lock people out of schools, to destroy businesses, to force masks on people, to try to force vaccines. I'm going to bring a reckoning to all these agencies, the CDC, the NIH, the FDA. They harm people in this country. And when Dr. Fauci said there was no learning loss for kids, that's a disgrace.
Thank you, Governor.
There's a reckoning coming.
This is like directly pitched to me.
Yeah.
And I want to commend him for wanting to do this. And also, does it matter to voters? I'm not sure. If they're willing to believe from Trump that it was DeSantis who's a Fauci fan and not Trump, then no, I don't see people clamoring for the reckoning that a DeSantis could bring and should bring.
No, and we've all, everyone talks about the reckoning. John Podhoretz he used to talk about it all the time because of how awful things were when we knew the best thing to do is get the kids back in school, and it was maddening, and yet here we are. Trump still looks like he has a narrow edge over Biden in the overall sort of polling average.
Although it does look like some Democrats are coming home. In some battleground polling, there's a little bit of a shift back towards Biden being more competitive than he was a couple of weeks ago.
There was
that should be a preview.
Yeah.
That Republican voters might keep in mind.
Right. By the time they realize that, by the way, it'll be too late. There was an interesting Detroit news poll that just came out that had Trump over Biden by 8. But it really depends. But that depends on who the other candidates are. If there are other third-party candidates, obviously Trump does better.
Speaking of a reckoning, should we move on to a little bit of COVID news?
Oh, okay, yeah.
We have 2 Fauci stories, by the way. He's been testifying in front of the subcommittee for COVID response, and there leaked a report yesterday to the New York Post that he had told that subcommittee that he's not convinced that kids suffered learning loss during the pandemic due to school closures.
He can say that, and he can say a lot of things. And the lesson learned from this is always to double down. Nobody ever actually has to admit they're wrong. The question is, do you think in his mind, you have to convince yourself in order to pull this off? Like, oh, no, I mean, everyone's back in school.
I think
the grades are a little bit low.
This is the beauty of a Fauci or frankly a Trump. Like if your compass and if your sort of id is the science, or in Trump's case, like is what's good for America, if that's what you believe, then you can just sort of change your mind and the truth changes with it. Right?
Yeah.
So what Fauci, I think all along we've seen that what Fauci declares at any given moment is the science in his mind. And I think, this one is the one that everyone has conceded.
Yeah. About schools. Even Randy Weingarten.
Yes.
She just blames Republicans.
Yeah, no, blame someone else,
but she knows.
They know it's real.
Yeah, and he's not even willing to go there. Well.
Audacity. Nobody should ever listen to this person again. The other thing he noted in that subcommittee is that, by the way, the 6 feet thing was just kind of came out of nowhere. It wasn't really scientific.
You mean standing in lines? How about going in one direction in the supermarket?
Yeah. The 6 feet thing is important because it was allegedly the science. Of course, now we find out. Now it can be told that it was not science. That is the thing that kept kids to 2 days a week in school for so long, because they couldn't space out the desks.
That's right. No, that's exactly right. They had to alternate. So some kids came in some days, other kids came in other days. And then there were some days that were called asynchronous where nobody came in at all.
And then actual idiots who work in the education system and idiots out on the street and in stores would be policing your 6 feet distance. At one point, my kids were policed for not being far enough away from a woman outside an ice cream shop.
Yeah, that's right.
Outside.
Yeah. They wouldn't, there was an ice cream shop.
Because the science.
Yes, no, there was an ice cream shop, and I remember these two young girls going in, and there was a sign. What are you laughing about? Two young girls? No, I don't mean like two.
I thought you were going to joke that you were the person who yelled at my kids.
No. I happened to be going to get ice cream with the kids, but there were these young girls who walked in, but they didn't have masks.
Yeah.
And some, they said, you got it. They turned around and they tried to do put their shirt up, like covering their faces, and the person's like, nope, that doesn't work.
No.
It doesn't. Yeah. And neither did the mask. So
sigh.
Again.
Can I add one more debate thought? I forgot about this one.
Sure.
An NBC reporter, Ali Vitali, noted that when DeSantis said that conservatism or the Republican Party should be about bright colors, not pale pastels.
Yes, and everybody flipped out.
Alleged that was a sexist attack, perhaps, on Nikki Haley. That is a reference to a Reagan speech, a very, very famous
from '76
Reagan speech that anyone right of center basically is familiar with. So no, that was not a sexist attack. Okay, back to the other news.
I made a reference in the Weekend Beacon newsletter, which you should all sign up for. I made a Claudine Gay reference about her leaving, and I said, I think in a resignation letter she says, old college presidents never die; they just fade into the faculty. And I don't know how many people would get that now. I mean, people our age and maybe older do, but do young people know the MacArthur thing? I don't know.
Do young people know usually ends with?
Yeah, no. The answer is no. Okay.
That's what we have to say about the youngs.
Yeah.
All right. What else do we have? Oh, by the way, speaking of closing schools, then in New York City,
this is crazy.
A school shut down.
James Madison High.
James Madison High was forced into quote unquote remote learning, although there was no remote instruction. It was just go home and practice things.
Yeah.
Because a tent setup for illegal immigrants had become unsustainable, and the city, in its great wisdom, decided to take this problem of the Biden administration's making and rob children once again of their school buildings and send them home to their parents, who at the last moment find out their kids are going to be home from school.
Yeah, which is also really
and just like this is wrong in so many ways.
Right.
But just in the major cities of America, never believe that they care about public education ever again. Like whatever tweaks or changes anyone wants to make, we should welcome them because these people do not care about the thing that they claim is sacred.
The kids?
They don't give
what
a
about
damn.
the children? Yeah. Now, to be sure, as I like to say, to be sure, the move to the school for these illegal migrants was because of an act of nature, inclement weather. It was that big storm that came up, okay? Right. And I appreciate that, and that the city or state officials were worried because they don't want to have them out there at this in this open field area.
Because they're going to be high winds.
Yeah, okay, it's not great. So then, where's another big place that you have to put them in this school? And they were still in the middle of doing a deep clean for the next day. They said it took some time for this to actually, the kids would come back a day later. Right. The kids were not also allowed to sort of just, you could Zoom with the teacher only if you sent the teacher an email prior to.
There was no actual instruction.
One of our Free Beacon writers, Jessica Kostescu, notes that there was a winter dance that was canceled.
Oh, nice.
And they claim it has nothing to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, all these people who love to have these in positions of power, who love to have these sort of lofty opinions about being so high-minded regarding immigration and migrants. And, we don't want any walls. It's inhumane, and the cages and this and that happened under Trump. It's going to be, we want everyone to come over. And you're seeing this humanitarian disaster happen in real time. And all these, a lot of these cities where they, declare themselves sanctuary cities, because it's fine. A couple people coming over.
Yeah. Who's going to take us up on it?
Well, yeah. I mean, why don't they stay in Texas? It's big.
Right.
I'm sure Brownsville is like us. I'm sure they have the same resources.
Right.
So they come over, and now it's real. And so now they're forced to deal with this. And the interesting thing is people in the city are also now actually coming to grips with how it's impacting them. And, do they all... Officials want to immediately blame, for example, the governor of Texas, right? Or Ron DeSantis in Florida, and say, it's their fault for sending people our way. But a lot of people are like, now, well, this is real. You can see it. Millions of people are crossing the border. Mm-hmm. We're all dealing with this. What are you going to do with it? And you hear rumblings of saying they're going to vote the other way because they're fed up.
Interesting.
Yeah, we'll see.
If only the Republican Party would nominate a candidate who they could turn to. At any rate.
Yes.
By the way, you'll remember during the thick of the pandemic and the school closings, at one point, a similar situation in the priorities shown by a major U.S. city, at one point, illegal immigrant children in a shelter were being taught in person by LAUSD teachers who were otherwise unwilling to teach
their own kids,
their own American citizen children in classrooms. I mean, this is people will say you're being cartoonish if you say the left in this country cares more about illegal immigrants than Americans and more about their treatment. But it's inaction. Yeah. The very clear prioritization. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the thing that is interesting about this particular high school is that without an outcry, how long would this have gone on? Right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's now very easy to cancel school. Like that's one of the things that the pandemic gave us is that you can just be like, we're no school today. Yeah. NBD.
Yeah.
And I think that obviously the public outcry made them back off of that fairly quickly. But this is an ongoing problem that is not getting better.
By the way, before we move on quickly, during the Golden Globes, did you see the Pfizer commercials? Because it was sponsored by Pfizer, right? And it was about getting the new vax. Because you got to wait for the triple-demic is coming, right? It's RSV, flu, and COVID again.
Yeah.
And one of the stars they rolled out for, because Pfizer spent, billions of dollars on the research and the vaccines. Megan Rapinoe is in the commercial, get vaccinated. And I'm like, well, cool. That's convinced me.
There you go.
I got to get it now. I got to get the jab.
The key to Vic's heart. All righty. Should we talk about Fani Willis?
Oh, yes. That's right.
So Fani Willis, I'm sure you'll remember.
What you talking about, Willis? Thank you. That's my different strokes.
Fani Willis, the prosecutor down in Georgia who is running that case against Trump. Trump, by the way, has been in court physically this week, I believe, in 2 places, in D.C. and New York. In New York, where he threatened to make the closing arguments.
Yeah.
In that case, the civil case about his business and its valuations.
Oh, that was ratings gold. I can't believe that they decided against that.
So he was in 2 courtrooms. We'll see what happens with the Georgia courtroom, because Fani Willis has found herself in a little bit of trouble.
Yes. Yes.
So the allegation is,
Please.
and it's not an unserious allegation because I believe it came from other court filings from a divorce proceeding by the man we're about to talk about's wife.
That's right.
Okay. So she hired a guy to be the special prosecutor.
Right.
She's
a district attorney, hires the guy to be special prosecutor.
It turns out she's romantically involved with that married man who is now has a wife filing for divorce, and she alleges that these 2 were involved. This is a problem because as the special prosecutor, that guy was paid a lot of money. And during the time that he was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money, Fani Willis was allegedly vacationing with him and having nice dinners, which would, of course, make her the beneficiary of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that she's paying her romantic interest in this case. What a cell phone this would be.
To quote George Costanza, was that wrong?
Was that wrong?
I don't know. I mean, what are the rules exactly about dating in the workplace there? I was reminded of Peter Strzok and Lisa Page at the Department of Justice, even though it's slightly different.
I always forget Lisa's name. Is that sexist of me? I only remember Peter Strzok.
But these inner office romances, they happen. Mary Katharine, the heart wants what it wants.
Mm-hmm. By the way, those Strzok Page texts.
Yeah.
I've always said, like, my goal would be to make my sexts far more interesting than that if they were ever to leak. Like, let's up the ante.
So the special prosecutor, Nathan Wade, right? One of the things that you mentioned is, of course, the various trips.
Right.
But oftentimes, because of, expenses and things, it's cheaper just to share the room. At least that's the argument I used to make.
They were actually great stewards of the taxpayers'
money. They were watching the taxpayer dollars. Yeah, one room, one bed. Oh, what?
Oh my gosh.
It's a double too. It's very narrow. bed.
We will see what happens there. What else is on our list, Vic? There are too many things I cannot remember.
Mary Katharine, let's see here. Okay.
Flip through your many pages.
We can move on to, ready for this, Alaska Airlines.
Oh, yes. We have to talk about this one.
So, and this is, I was in Florida at the time and was about to fly back and that news broke. I'm like, what's the plane?
Okay. So it's a Boeing plane, an Alaska Airlines plane. For the record, I like Alaska Airlines a lot. I have flown them many times across the country. I enjoy their service very much.
I used to get confused with them in Frontier, but Alaska is better.
Oh, Alaska's definitely a different class of airline. However, these folks did not have a great trip because the door plug, as they call it, which is just the door of the airplane, flew out of the airplane. Yeah. There's a gaping hole in the side of the airplane. The oxygen masks are down. We are depressurized. We hope that you abided by the seatbelt sign.
How many times, Mary Katharine, you're on a plane and they have to go through the safety procedures? How many times do you pay attention versus...
Here's the thing. This is a great victory for Steve, who when we're on a plane together, is like, put your seatbelt on.
Oh.
The sign says put your seatbelt
on. I always put my seatbelt on.
And he tightens it up, and I'm like, come on, dude.
Tight.
Like, I'm fine. But you know what? This was the time.
Yeah.
This was the time to have that seatbelt on.
When they explain about putting it around, not everything... Sometimes I get lost in the explanation of the life raft thing because you just hope that it's not a case if you're, but the other things I do kind of think about, obviously you put yours on first before you help anybody else and you tighten it if that happens. But I always wonder where exactly does it pop out of because it's very well
It looks
hidden.
fairly obvious in the video.
Yeah, it did.
Well, so the door fell, a guy reported it in his backyard so that the feds could go pick it up. There was several phones, I believe, that flew out. But other than that, folks unscathed, which is like, thank goodness.
Right. It's
but
not
now,
like executive decision.
Of course, everybody's going to go and check the security measures on these
737
doors.
Max.
And by the way, I listened to the whole conversation between the air traffic controller and the pilot, the woman who was landing this plane. She was very calm, They all kept it together. I can't imagine sitting in that cabin for many minutes. I mean, the call is like 3 to 3.5 minutes long before they clear them to do this emergency landing because, of course, you got to clear the runways in order to make that happen.
Yeah.
So it's like a good 3+ minutes before they're like, okay, come on down. Yikes.
Here's the thing. First of all, it was miraculous. And I say that, truly miraculous, that there was nobody sitting in that particular seat when the door blew off. And it's not even the emergency door. It's like this. It's the plug. The second thing is a personal question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a seat preference on planes? You fly a lot.
I prefer a window or an aisle, obviously, over a middle, but I don't have a strong preference between those two.
Has this affected your preference?
Perhaps now, because I didn't have a preference, it will become aisle.
There used to be all these sort of theories about where to sit on a plane is the safest. For example, right in the middle of the fuselage, where right where the base where the wings are, for example. And I like the window because, number one, view.
Mm-hmm.
I like the sun outside, when you're out there. And then when you're landing, it's kind of exciting. And also, you don't have to get up for anybody for bathroom purposes.
That's true.
Except for now
but
that
then
I'm
you gotta
older.
Ask people to
right
get
now
up
that
for you.
I once held it in from a flight, I believe, from Copenhagen to Dulles.
Yeah, I do.
That was terrible. That was amazing. Yeah.
That might be some of your health problems.
That might explain the stones. But no, now that I'm like, the aisle is, you got a little bit more leg room, and then anytime you want to get up.
Yes, I like that.
Okay.
All right. Well, I didn't like that one bit. I didn't like seeing that. I'm glad those people were safe.
Did you have Jodie Foster thoughts? We were talking about our Gen Z, our Gen
want to
Z
note,
subject.
because we keep harping on Gen Z, and I'm going to continue to. But Jodie Foster gets is it a You Love to Hear It? What is it?
Yeah, sure. Although she's never been. I mean,
she's just like, I like that. She's just living in her truth, man. She's just saying it like it is.
Yes.
And she says that it's annoying to work with Gen Z because they're like, not really feeling the vibes today. I don't think I want to work.
Also, she would say, your emails are filled with grammar. Don't you check? And they said, why would that? That would be so self-limiting.
How dare.
Self-limiting.
How dare.
Her mention of grammar,
mm-hmm.
It's just, so dear to my heart. So, I mean, I love her for that.
Jodie Foster's been working hard since she was like 5 years old.
Yes, I was going to mention a movie.
She has real, cachet here.
That's right. That she does. She's been working for a very long time. And I remember a movie, I'm not going to say Taxi Driver because that's, you people, that's a terrible thing. Yeah. Okay, I'm not making that joke. However, Bugsy Malone. Which was an Alan Parker film, and it just came out after like The Godfather, and it was kids as gangsters. So they had Tommy guns that fired cream puffs.
Oh,
and
I vaguely remember
this. It was fascinating
this.
Because the two leads, it was Jodie Foster and Scott Baio.
Yes.
And she had already done movies.
70s and 80s child actors were in some weird movies.
Oh yeah,
there were some weird moments if you grew up in that time.
But I would say her line about grammar. It reminded me during our journalism conference when I said that these things matter, because we're commas and little things. It's broken windows editing is my big thing. And little things lead to bigger things. But in general, about expressing yourself. And another panelist asked me, a very prominent person, said she agrees 100%, but why? And when, in the event of this Jodie Foster situation, if some younger person said, why does it matter that we need 2 commas instead of 1 or a semicolon or whatever, an M dash, what would your answer be?
Oh, now I'm on the spot?
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't have an easy answer for that other than to say that, well, it separates us from the animals. We're able to
I think that, much like the way you communicate speaking, there are different settings for different kinds of communication. Yeah. And when you are communicating in a work setting with a boss, when you are communicating in writing, when you are writing something for publication,
right,
you do want to observe the real rules. And I think that there are other times when you can text and not get it all right. Now, that being said, until like 2 years ago, I edited my own texts and made sure that they were correct all the time. And Jennifer, if she got them, because she is our youthful editor, would have been like, what is wrong with this person? Because there would have been proper punctuation in all of my texts, which is frowned upon by the younger generation.
Oh, no.
Yes, it comes off very formal and icy and maybe like you're mad at them. She's nodding, yes.
Yeah, no, but there are certain like acronyms that I hate using that everybody uses. For example, for texts and things, I will type it out and I must drive people crazy.
Well, so the new one that I've adopted is that I do look. It's these are affectations again for the correct audience. I do use THO instead of THOUGH.
Oh yeah,
in text,
well, yeah,
because that's sending a different kind of signal than the full word.
That's been tried before, by the way, in newspapers in the old days. Joe Epstein told me, because I was making a joke about the Youngs.
Yeah.
And saying though, and he says, actually, Vic. Said,
for print purposes?
Yeah, for print purposes.
It probably saved
for
it.
space.
Made it
yes,
that's
exactly.
back when we had to physically lay the
That's right.
the
yeah.
hot
there was a lot of
hot type.
A lot of airing and letting going on.
That's
okay.
That's what Vic and I used to do in our early days.
We did. I knew all this, and let me tell you, I knew all about the drop cap and how to make the drop caps happen. The worst drop cap was the J because it was a longer letter than the other letters. It's crazy.
We were
just don't open. Just
we
don't
were
start with a J.
kerning all over the
Please,
place.
Kerning. Lots
all
of
right.
kerning. There's more, but we can move on. We can save for later if you want.
Is there something short we should wrap up with?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Pro-Hamas spray painting.
Oh gosh. Yes. Can we just let's just call out the trash
yes,
real
please,
quick.
All right.
Pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian protesters in L.A. Spray painted the National Cemetery's wall with Free Gaza and Palestinian slogans. It's very obvious that this is a veterans cemetery. It says it on the sign that they're spray painting. So there's no mistaking what's happening here. And that's just trash, and y'all are trash, and no one should listen to you. In addition to the blocking of all the highways, which is a whole other
the Holland
issue.
Tunnel in New York. Does this make people want to be more sympathetic to the cause?
No, not at all. But they just know they can do it. They know they can do it because these cities will not
get arrested.
Punish them.
Yeah.
Even if they're momentarily detained, almost none of them pay an actual price. Police should swiftly remove these people when they are blocking traffic. Right. They should punish people who vandalize. Again, these are not speech. These things, these offenses are not speech. Right. You should arrest them. And
Vandalism.
You should punish them.
How many people are arrested for defacing the White House? For spray painting? Remember
well,
spray
it depends
painting?
for what cause.
I was going to say, because, could you imagine?
Is it a good cause
if that
or
was
is
a
it a bad
January,
cause?
if it was a January 6th thing where you spray painted, that person would be like 50 years in jail.
Well, these clashes with the motorists who are getting mad are going to get worse.
Yeah.
If the proper authorities do not do what their authority
People
allows
will
them to do,
take
which
it
is
into their own hands.
Yes, it's not going to be a safe situation. So I would encourage cities to decide to have your roadways open to motorists. Just a thought.
Also, these protesters for a good cause, like the person spray painting on the war memorial, right, for the veterans rather, wearing the COVID mask, because I'm sure that person was worried. That's the reason why that person was covering. His face is because
the San Francisco City Council, by the way, I believe called for a ceasefire the other day, so that should wrap things up pretty quick.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. I make sure that I hope they have Bibi Netanyahu's email.
Yeah.
Okay, really quickly, just a Pop-Tart clarification.
Okay.
This is from last week.
This is important. Yeah.
It is. I like Pop-Tarts with the frosting, and sometimes it came with sprinkles. I was initially confused because I was thinking about toaster strudel, and Jennifer points out Mary Katharine brought it up. I wasn't listening. Listener Megan Blake reminds me that Gretchen Wiener in Mean Girls says her father invented toaster strudel, not Pop-Tarts.
Oh, that's right.
That's why I love her even more now.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Lacey Chabert.
It's a match made in heaven.
That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. And you can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Matus.
I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram, where you can see my fit. We will also put it on Getting Hammered Podcast, YouTube, and Instagram, so you can check in and see it. By the way, the reason I'm wearing it here is because I decided to myself, if I'm going to embarrass my kids a little bit, and I did. They're like, Mom, you can't get out of the car in that. That I can't just embarrass them. I must also embarrass myself a little bit. So that's what I'm doing. And in the elevator on the way up, I thought maybe I can just ride this out. Nobody will question me. And I get the first person on the elevator is like, well, you look festive.
Is that really? Just now in the elevator?
Yes. And then within another 15 seconds, another young woman got on the elevator. She goes, I love your outfit. And I was like, thanks.
See?
Jennifer seemed to approve. So you guys can tune in and see that. And one more programming note for the Iowa caucuses. I will be in New York on set at 30 Rock with NBC.
Wow.
If you want to watch NBC broadcast, hear my insights on whatever goes down.
Excellent.
So,
and I will be in Arlington, Virginia.
Best team in news over here, man. We covered a lot of ground today. Thank you for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.